Yesterday I happened to be on a television program on cable TV, a channel called Current TV. And this is Al Gore's new venture into broadcasting. And the show that I was on is The Young Turks, which began on YouTube. The host, Cenk Uyguy, I guess is how you pronounce his name, did a brief stint on MSNBC and then left, and now he's on this Current TV. And I had not been on the show. I had been on The Young Turks at some point, I think one time. And so I did this show last night, just before I did the Lou Dobbs show on Fox Business. I did this brief hit with The Young Turks. And, basically they brought me on to talk about the 1% and Occupy Wall Street. And before I got to speak, Chet was reading this article that I mentioned yesterday, or Shank rather, was reading this article that Bloomberg wrote, where a lot of bankers, Wall Street types, are interviewed defending the 1%. And unfortunately, Bloomberg, most of the people he talked to, including myself, were in the financial industry, although I didn't get any government bailouts, but a lot of the people who they were talking to were among the recipients of government bailouts or are among the 1% who are fortunate enough to earn their income in such a way that they only have to pay 15% tax. That is the loophole that is there that gives a special break for carried interest. And it has wide support among Democrats and Republicans who like to talk about how it's not fair that the richer are paying less taxes. Of course, they're always talking about these particular rich, but of course, they do whatever they can to protect that tax break. So, of course, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. But unfortunately, the people that are featured in this Bloomberg story are all pretty much from finance. And so he went one after another going over these individuals, kind of making fun of them for the things that they're saying. And he's basically trying to paint all of the 1%ers with this brush, as if everybody who's in the top 1% is paying hardly any income taxes, is getting all kinds of government subsidies, all kinds of bailout money, is just feeding off the public trough, and that's everybody in the 1%. And of course, I'm trying to point out, they're not even 1% of the 1%. You can count those people. There's not a lot of them. The people who are physically living off of the government bailout money and the Federal Reserve. This is a tiny fraction of the 1%. The vast majority of the people in the 1% are paying very high levels of taxes, and these are the people who are creating all the jobs, who are really the linchpin of the U.S. economy. They're the ones that are getting up early in the morning, the last ones to leave their offices. They're the ones that make it all work. They're the conductors of the free market symphony. They put all the pieces together. They put the land, labor, and capital together, and they make it all work. They're the ones that risk their capital. They're the ones that sign all the paychecks. They're the ones that don't make anything unless everybody else gets paid first and there's something left over. So without the entrepreneurs, without these individuals, the whole economy would simply implode. Yet, Cenk Uyguy doesn't want to give them any credit. Anyway, I'd come on there and try to talk about it. It's very hard, to get a word in there. And so I'm trying to speak about how, hey, it's not, don't blame the Wall Street bankers for the bailouts. And I told them, look, I'm on your side. I'm against these bailouts. I was against them before you even knew they were coming. I was against the bailouts. But I don't blame the banks for taking the money. I mean, why wouldn't they take the money? You'd have to be an idiot not to take government money. If the government went to Cenk Uyguy and said, we feel that you had a bad year last year. We think you're a good guy. We appreciate what you're doing. We decided to give you $50 million. Here's the check. Do you want it or not? I mean, would he turn it down? Does anybody think he would turn that money down? In fact, if he turned it down, he'd be an idiot. Anybody that turned down that money would be an idiot. If the government offered me $50 million, $100 million, of course I'd take it. Why wouldn't I take it? I mean, of course, if the government's going to give me $100 million and I turn it down, well, they're just going to give it to somebody else. It might as well be me. I don't blame people for taking money from the government. I blame the government for giving them the money in the first place. Just like when it comes to unemployment compensation. I don't blame people for not looking for work, for turning down jobs because they'd rather collect unemployment. It makes perfect sense. I mean, that's human nature. I don't blame people for acting in their own self-interest. I blame the government for doing that, for creating that incentive, for giving them that option. You know, part of the hypocrisy of the liberals who want to blame the bankers for taking the bailouts, when it comes to the mortgage markets, they never want to blame the borrower for lying on his loan, on his no-doc loan, for buying a house he couldn't afford. They want to blame the banks, right? They want to say, well, you were predators. You're the ones that made the loans. Don't blame the victims here. Don't blame the people who just took the money, the homeowners. Well, that's the same thing, right? If you're going to say that we should blame the banks for giving money to homeowners that couldn't pay it back, then why not blame the government for giving money to the bankers? Right? Be consistent. At least consistently blame the same party. See, I'm the same way. I'm not blaming people for gambling with other people's money. I'm not blaming people for lying on their mortgages to buy a house. After all, they were convinced that they would get rich. All they had to do is sign a piece of paper, put down some phony numbers, and they got a ticket to Easy Street. The money was going to start rolling in. The fault was in the banks for making the loans. But why did the banks make the loans? Because the government guaranteed them. The government didn't guarantee them, the loans wouldn't have been made. So I'm consistent. The liberals are inconsistent, and that's probably the nicest thing you could say about them. Anyway, I'm going to continue this discussion and take some of your calls. If anybody saw this thing on the Young Turks, it's over on YouTube. Maybe give us a call. Let me get your impression. And I'm going to read some emails I got from people who saw that, critical of me. We're talking about my appearance on the Young Turks. Now, one thing I just want to say, if you look at the show and, that at the end of the show, he did cut me off. And I wasn't exactly sure why he cut me off until I was able to see the clip. And I know he had asked me a question that I didn't answer. The reason I didn't answer is because I couldn't hear him. I told the producers of the show before it started that I was having problems with my earpiece and I could barely hear anything that was being said. So I said that the host or anybody is going to have to speak very loudly in order for me to hear. And so he tried to ask me a question while I was talking. I couldn't hear a thing that he was saying, so I just assumed that I was going to continue to answer the previous question. Now that I actually heard the question that he was trying to ask me, I would have loved to have answered it on the air if I heard that he had said it. But unfortunately, I didn't. Now, if you're watching the show, it might appear that I'm rude because I'm talking and ignoring what he's saying. I didn't know he was talking. And, of course, I can't see him. I can't see his lips. I can't see his hand gestures. So I'm sitting in a room all by myself. And if I don't hear anything in my earpiece, I have no idea that he is trying to ask me a question. So, I wasn't trying to avoid his question. I would have loved to have answered it. I just didn't know that he asked it. But anyway, what I want to do is read to you the mail that I got. And all of it negative. And I didn't get a lot. I only got 3 emails, but I'm going to read all 3. I don't want you to think I'm cherry picking them here. But here's the first one that I got. Quote, saw you on the Young Turks. Boy, are you full of yourself. If by socialist capitalism you are referring to socializing the losses and privatizing profits, I would agree with you. Otherwise, you are just plain full of crap. Nothing but whiny Republican talking points. Suck it up, dude. Don't like paying taxes? Move somewhere else. Move somewhere else if I don't like paying taxes. Well, is that really what the left wants? Now, does anybody like paying taxes? I don't think the poor or the middle class like paying taxes any more than I do, even though I'm paying a much higher percentage of my income than they are. But do the left really want the people who don't like paying taxes, which I would say is every employer in this country? Should we all leave? Is that what they want? Do they want everybody who runs a business, right, to just leave the country? Do they want the country to be full of just people looking for work, but nobody willing to hire them? Is that what they want? Because I hear when people say that, hey, you don't like paying taxes, leave. Well, maybe what would it be like if all the people who don't like paying taxes left? Who'd be left? The people who want welfare. That's it. But where would they get the money if the people that are paying the taxes leave the country? Anyway, that was from Mike in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Here's the next one. Comes from Jay Trevor, I guess, in Del Mar, New York. Here's what he writes. Your greed knows no bounds. It is the most disgraceful thought pattern ever. It's inhuman beings like you who have brought this nation to the mess it's in now, and you are the reason people are dying and losing all. Your ideas are insane, wrong, and harmful. Propaganda is ugly. So, what do you really think? But so people like me, I'm responsible for bringing the country to its knees. And I guess by people like me, you mean businessmen, entrepreneurs who start companies from scratch, who provide services, who produce products, who hire people, who pay all the taxes. We're the ones that have brought the country to its knees. What about the people that are living off of handouts? The people who are just collecting welfare checks? What did they do? What did they do for the country? Are they the real backbone of the country? The people feeding off the public trough, they're the backbone. The people filling it up, they're the ones that are the problem. I mean, come on. Here's this last one from Rich Fairbanks in Jacksonville, Oregon. I just saw you on the Young Turks. I think I can help you understand the rage and the revulsion. I will do it by analogy. I work in a forestry. Good work, but there are a few minor annoyances. A couple of times a year, as I get ready to jump into the shower at the end of the day, I find it tick. I immediately pull it out, flush it down the toilet. I believe this is the natural revulsion an organism feels when it finds there has been an attempt to parasite it. That is how people feel towards you and your ilk. At current tax rates and under current campaign finance laws, you are a social parasite. Rich Fairbanks in Jacksonville, Oregon. So wait a minute. So I'm a social parasite. See, a parasite is an organism that feeds off of another organism. People like me, we're the hosts. See, he's got it backwards. I'm not the parasite. I'm the host. People are feeding off of me. I am paying taxes. The government has taken half my income in taxes. You think about the millions of dollars I personally pay every year in taxes, but not only the money I pay. What about all my employees? What about the millions and millions of dollars a year in taxes my employees are paying? Where are they getting that money? They're earning that money because I created the jobs. So I am personally responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars of taxes paid into the federal treasury. How does that make me a parasite? Who are the parasites? The parasites are the people who are cashing checks from the government, not the people who are writing the checks to the government. And it's amazing how so many people want to criticize me. And I ask them, hey, how many jobs have you created? How many people have you hired? Why don't you stop criticizing the people who are creating the jobs and get off your butts and go create some jobs on your own? Why don't you do something for the country for a change instead of just blaming the people who are carrying the burden that they're not shouldering a big enough share of it? Meanwhile, you're in there riding in the cart, doing nothing, complaining that the people pulling the cart aren't pulling it fast enough, and then calling them the parasites. Anyway, so I actually answered all three of these emails